And we're back live here on Bengals Breakdown. Welcome in. I am your host, Stone Shields. Thanks so much for joining me here this Wednesday afternoon. Got my right-hand man, Chris Daughtry, helping us out today, producing today's live show. Got plenty of stuff to talk about. Our first question for you guys: will the Cincinnati Bengals reach deals with Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins and Trey Hendrickson? Let me know in the comment section. Type Y for yes or N for no. Some new reports have come out, and it seems like Cincinnati is prioritizing, hey, let's bring all three of these guys back, make sure they're happy, make sure they can ink long-term contracts. We'll see if Cincinnati is going to be able to get it done, but it seems like that is the goal, which I think is really a step in the right direction, because as we'll get into on today's show, so many times in the offseason, this organization kind of just sits back and does nothing, right? And, as a fan base, and I'm sure as the players in the locker room would like to think, hey, why aren't we out there? Why aren't we, bringing our stars back, bringing our good players back? Seems like this offseason is a little bit different, and they have different priorities, but we will see if they are, in fact, able to bring all three guys back. Give some shout-outs here. Appreciate everybody being here early, hanging out with us here at Bengals Breakdown. Full live show coming your guys' way. Jacob just got it. He's here. He says, "Who day? What's going on, Jacob? Thanks for stopping by." Allie is here as well. Bengals fan says, N does not believe that Cincinnati will be able to get things done with all three of those guys. Derek's young. He's got his Y in the comment section. Trey also says N as well. Greg says Y. Forrest also says why, so keep the comments coming. We'll certainly get into that here on our first segment, talking about the latest reports, some new information from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN and others, Jordan Schultz as well from Fox, that we will be discussing. Austin Jones spamming his Y's in the comment section right now. I appreciate you, Austin. Appreciate all you guys for stopping by and hanging out with us here for our live show. We'll also talk draft here on Bengals Breakdown. Let me know in the comment section, who do you want to draft at number 17 overall? Kind of an interesting spot to be picking, right? With Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, the expectation is never to have a good draft pick, and 17 certainly isn't really a good draft pick. I think once you get outside the top 10, obviously the level of player certainly decreases a little bit, so the Bengals going to have an interesting decision to make at that 17 overall spot. As you guys know, I'm all in on Malachi Starks, as is my guy Tim Tyra. It's my belief that if Starks is there, you take him, but we will see. We're going to do another mock draft here on today's show. It'll be the final segment, so make sure you guys stick around for that. Daniel Jeremiah has put out a new mock draft. We'll talk about who he has Cincinnati taking at that number 17 overall selection. CWT is here as well. Appreciate you, CWT. He says either Mykel Williams or Malachi Starks. See lots of Malachi Starks here in the comment section. Colin also says if we could get Jair Alexander, that would be amazing. I think there's mixed opinions on Jair Alexander across the league. I'm still on board with Jair Alexander. Obviously, red flag that he's only played 7 games back-to-back seasons, and certainly has diva tendencies, right? We did a whole video yesterday talking about Jair Alexander, but yeah, I'm here. I'm here for that, totally. I would love to have Jair Alexander in Cincinnati, but of course Green Bay would need to release him or, of course, trade him in order for that to happen. Austin says trade Joe for Lamar. Austin's in here trolling us a little bit. Nobody would be silly enough to make that decision. Trey says, feel like Jair is a head case. That's absolutely a relevant thing to bring up as well. Dominic says Trey Smith. We're not going to be talking about Trey Smith on today's show. That's certainly we will attack as we go forward. Kansas City not planning on using the franchise tag on Trey Smith, so that certainly could open up some stuff with other teams perhaps bringing him in. Also, going to be talking Jermaine Burton on today's show. Burton, of course, has gotten in all types of trouble with the Cincinnati Bengals, former third-round pick last year. I guess now he's no longer a rookie now that the season is over, but he's certainly still acting very immature, having issues, got evicted twice. Second time, maybe not his fault. Allegedly, had family members staying at his place. They brought dogs. Dogs weren't allowed at the apartment complex, but something like that seems a little suspicious if you get evicted just for that behavior. I think certainly prior situations impacted that decision from that apartment complex to, in fact, evict him. So let me know what you guys think. Are we keeping him or are we cutting him if we are the Cincinnati Bengals? Obviously, you allocated a top-of-the-line resource, third-round draft pick, and bringing him in. And certainly the talent is there, but can't always fix stupid, and that seems to be the situation here with Jermaine Burton. Rob still wants to keep. Yeah, I think there's certainly is a good chance that the Bengals will run it back with Jermaine Burton, right? I mean, you picked him. He hasn't – the accusations, the assault stuff against him is not fun whatsoever, but no charges were pressed. So, it's certainly an odd area you got to tiptoe there if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. Dangerous GT says C. He's ready to cut Jermaine Burton after one season. We will be talking about him in today's mailbag specifically. And make sure, by the way, you get your questions in for the mailbag. Hashtag Bengals right now. That'll be our third segment here on our live show. So make sure you get those questions in, or you can super chat to skip the line all together. All right, if you are ready to start today's live show, help us out. Hit that thumbs up icon if you have not done so already. Currently, I have 24 likes. We'll hang out here for a second until we get 30 likes or so here on our show. Always going for that 50-50 like ratio. We got about 80 people or so hanging out with us here right now at Bengals Breakdown. See if we can't get to 30 likes here. Something you should always do for all of our shows here at Bengals Breakdown. We certainly appreciate it. And there we go. Just like that, we have 31 likes. Keep hitting that thumbs up icon. We appreciate it. Something you should do for all of our videos here at Bengals Breakdown. Coming up live on today's show, first segment, going to be talking some news and rumors. The latest on Tee Higgins, Chase, and Trey Hendrickson. Up next after that, Bengals got some great news today from the NFL. We're going to be breaking down what exactly that means here on today's show. Again, live mailbag, segment 3 of our show. Get those questions in. Hashtag Bengals. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Free agency, draft, Joe Burrow, Trey Hendrickson, Chase. You name it. Get those questions in so you can participate. And also, final segment to round out our live show, a new mock draft from Daniel Jeremiah. All coming up live here on Bengals Breakdown. Welcome into Bengals Breakdown. I am your host, Stone Shields. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here today. Coming up on today's show, we got a new report. Couple of new reports from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN as well as Jordan Schultz detailing the Bengals' plans this offseason when it comes to all of their star players, in particular Chase and Tee Higgins. Also going to talk some franchise tag notes, look back at the history of the Cincinnati Bengals, see all the guys they have tagged and why this situation here with Tee Higgins is pretty unprecedented for the Bengals as an organization. Dick LeBeau, also former head coach, by the way, of the Cincinnati Bengals years ago in the early 2000s. He had some comments on Joe Burrow. We will break those down. And also some backup quarterback discussion that we need to get into as the Bengals' former quarterback recently signed a 2-year extension with the Carolina Panthers. I think we all know who that is. But before we get into that, make sure you guys give me a follow over on Twitter at StoneShields_. Got to get to at least 550 Twitter followers here by the end of the month of February. Not too much time left. Obviously, February, a shorter month. So help me out. Give me a follow over on Twitter at StoneShields_. All right, so earlier in the week, we got a report from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, and he says that Cincinnati wants to sign Chase, Tee Higgins, and Trey Hendrickson to new deals. And really, this is noteworthy for several reasons. One, Cincinnati as an organization has a history of kind of just hanging back and not doing much. And the fact that this report has surfaced via ESPN and others that have said the same thing, I think certainly is very significant when you're talking about the future of the Cincinnati Bengals. And as a fan base, I think we all should be pretty excited about these recent developments. Here's exactly what Jeremy Fowler had to say in regards to the Cincinnati Bengals stars. Several guys here that he is discussing. He said the team will attempt to secure a trio of stars who need new deals. Wide receiver Chase and Tee Higgins and defensive end Trey Hendrickson for the long term. Whether Cincinnati can pull it off remains uncertain, but the team's messaging behind the scenes is that it's certainly going to try. That starts with Higgins, who is set to hit free agency March 12th. One team source says they believe the Bengals will use the franchise tag on Higgins if no long-term deal is reached by March 4th tag deadline in order to have time to get a deal done. Can't let him walk. Also, Jordan Schultz most recently kind of adding on to this yesterday when he wrote this online for Fox. He said, "It's no coincidence that Joe Burrow has been so public about his desire for the Bengals to extend both Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins. Consider it a pointed message to the front office. Chase, as I've reported, was very, very close to getting a deal done before last season began. In fact, multiple sources familiar with negotiations say that the 2024 Triple Crown winner was even willing to sit out the team's first couple of games. Ultimately, Chase chose to play, and now Cincinnati is staring at the league's first $40 million wide receiver. That's right, Chase will command at least $40 million this per season." Have my thoughts here in a moment, but first, the pinned comment of today's video. Will the Bengals reach deals with Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins and Trey Hendrickson? That's the question I'm asking. All three. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Type Y for yes or N for no. If that ad comes here on YouTube, that's totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down in the comments. Let us know what you think. As I mentioned at the top, this is very intriguing to me, right? Because Cincinnati, as I mentioned, as an organization, likes to hold back. Remember last offseason when we were talking about Tee Higgins, there really wasn't much communication between Higgins and the Cincinnati Bengals. It kind of just was what it was, and Higgins ultimately ended up signing the franchise tag just to, calm the noise down, and just chose to move on and let his play do the talking. In past years, it really would have been crickets when it came to situations like this for the Cincinnati Bengals, but reports have surfaced. Cincinnati wants to get this done, and again, I think that really is intriguing if you are the Bengals and, of course, a Bengals fan. Tee Higgins, of course, needs to be back for the Cincinnati Bengals. This was the expected situation, in my opinion, that he would get the franchise tag and ultimately try to work together in terms of getting a long-term deal done. So I think, some people seem to be a little bit surprised. Oh, my goodness, they're tagging him again. Well, that's exactly what they should do, right? In this situation, you tag them with the effort, of course, of trying to reach a long-term agreement. Bengals still have plenty of time in order to get that done. Trey Hendrickson, on the other hand, he's a guy that really has produced for you these past two seasons, back-to-back seasons with 17.5 sacks. Pretty incredible stuff, and only slotted to make $16 million this coming season. Obviously, that is grossly underpaid considering all the stuff that Trey Hendrickson has been able to do for your football team. And he's certainly a guy that Cincinnati wants to get back as well. A bit of a different situation than, of course, the situations with Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase. Both those guys looking to get their first big payday, right? And Trey Hendrickson, of course, at a bit of a different stage in his career at this point as a guy that is 30 years of age here at this point. Jamar Chase, of course, seems to be the priority for Cincinnati, but it will be interesting to see what they get done first. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Tee Higgins deal actually come before a Jamar Chase deal, even though I think everybody would agree that Jamar Chase, if you had to pick who was more important, you would say Jamar Chase, but just the way the things work with the franchise tag, it would really help Cincinnati out if they could attack this with Tee Higgins and then see how much money they have to, of course, pay Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson, and, of course, others as well. Now, a note here on Tee Higgins, he is expected to be the first Bengal to get franchise tagged twice, which really I thought, obviously is unprecedented since this has never happened before, but certainly very interesting as we go back through Bengals history. Nobody has been tagged twice, and it certainly seems like that is where things are headed with Tee Higgins, and rightfully so, here in my opinion. Cincinnati, as I mentioned, has plenty of time in order to get this done, right? July 15th is the latest they can wait if they're trying to get an extension with Tee Higgins. Of course, the franchise tag deadline is March 4th, so they just wanted to come out here. Again, this was reported by James Rapien. They haven't officially tagged him, but I think that will be coming here in the coming days. Then they'll have a couple of months, hopefully, to work something out as far as a deal goes. Last year, the Bengals were the first team to announce their franchise tag publicly, and the Bengals officially haven't announced anything. Again, that's Rapien that has been doing that reporting, covering the Cincinnati Bengals, doing a great job, but I would expect them probably to be first again because it's only a matter of days here at this point before Cincinnati officially announces that they will be franchise tagging Tee Higgins for the second consecutive off season. Here's some recent, and I say recent because it's just a lot of these guys aren't really recent, but they're the most recent guys that have been tagged by the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, Tee Higgins was tagged last offseason. Jesse Bates, we know how that went. He held out for an extended period of time. Thought for a moment there he might miss some games. Ultimately came back, balled out, and then left the Cincinnati Bengals. A.J. Green, he made a ton of money after he was franchise tagged, but then he had his arguably worst season of his career, and then he ultimately ended up signing with the Arizona Cardinals the following season. Michael Johnson's another guy, an old pass rusher here with Cincinnati. Mike Nugent, believe it or not, kicker, is the only guy that was franchise tagged and then ultimately was able to come to terms with the deal with the Cincinnati Bengals after that. So he actually ended up signing 2 separate deals after being franchise tagged. And he had some great moments as a Cincinnati Bengal, but ultimately was cut at the end of his time here with Cincinnati due to some missed kicks. But there you have it. That's kind of a recent breakdown of guys that have been tagged for the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll continue with our show here in a moment, but first, a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. Bengals sideline hats are available now. Head on over to Fanatics. Check out some of this gear. Chatsports.com/Bengals sideline. That link will be in the comments section and the description of today's video. I've got a few of these hats myself. Love wearing them. Obviously, it is the Bengals offseason right now, but that does not mean you can't get some Cincinnati Bengals swag. Head on over to Fanatics and check out their sideline hats right now. Talk Joe Burrow here on today's show. Dick LeBeau, who, of course, longtime defensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, certainly has had some battles over the years. I think he was there for at least 10 years at one point, like 04 to 14, something like that. He was the DC for them, but in the early 2000s, he actually had a stint as the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals and was the defensive coordinator for the Bengals prior to that. And he really had some high praise on Joe Burrow. I feel like we haven't talked a ton about Joe Burrow here in recent weeks. So we'll throw Joe Burrow here on today's show. Here's exactly what LeBeau had to say about the Bengals franchise quarterback. He said he might be the most accurate I've seen. He's an old-timer. When I came into the league, there were 12 teams. They each had 2 quarterbacks. Only 24 people in the country were getting paid to throw the ball. So they were pretty darn good passers. Van Brocklin, Bart Starr, Unitas, they just had ball placement, and Joe reminds me of those guys a lot. He's a better athlete, quicker, can run more. He doesn't get much credit for his escapability, but he's not a sitting duck back there. He can do that part. You don't say this guy is better than that guy, but they're all right up there, and that's where Joe is. Look, to me, Joe Burrow at this point, especially after what happened with Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the National Football League. Here is the guy that won MVP here in Josh Allen. Let's just talk some numbers here comparing these guys. I mean, you go down the list. Completion percentage, yards per game, touchdowns, all in favor of Joe Burrow, and you're talking about the guy on the right winning the MVP. Now, I love Josh Allen. I love what he is able to do out there on the football field, and he's a great guy, but I just feel like Joe Burrow has been getting disrespected really throughout the entirety of his professional career. I thought it was really nice that a guy like Dick LeBeau, who obviously is a legend when it comes to the National Football League, was able to step up and speak some truth here about Joe Burrow. And you know Burrow's going to be chomping at the bit to get back out there in 2025 and make a run for a Super Bowl. Another opportunity for you guys to get involved with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. Rank Joe Burrow among NFL quarterbacks. Let me know in the comments section. 1 to 32 sound off for us right now. All right, Andy Dalton, former Bengals quarterback, was the starter in Cincinnati for 7 seasons, took the Bengals to the playoffs for 5 straight years. Unfortunately, lost every single game, was without a playoff win. But good for Andy. He's getting a 2-year extension with the Carolina Panthers, presumably to back up Bryce Young, who got benched, but really showed some great things at the end of the year for Carolina. Dalton will be back. And I just wanted to bring that up because it made me think about the backup quarterback situation here with the Cincinnati Bengals. You loved what you got out of Jake Browning in 2023 when Burrow went down, but Browning didn't play at all in 2024. Burrow was out there for every single snap. So you kind of have a decision to make with that backup quarterback spot. Browning going into the final year of his deal. We will see if Cincinnati opts to do anything with him this offseason or if he'll kind of go into this year as a sitting duck and you kind of reevaluate after that. But the Bengals really have a quality backup in Jake Browning, and it'll be interesting to see if they what they do with him going forward and if he's going to be Joe Burrow's backup for the long term. Make sure you guys subscribe if you have not done so already. That's youtube.com/BengalsTV. We will be here all off season long. Don't miss out on any of our coverage. Hit that sub button right now. Who will the Bengals reach deals with 1, 5, and 91? Let me know in the comments section. Type Y for yes or N for no. Joe says Bengals are saving up for Cole's cash. That's funny. We do have some super chats here to get to on today's show. The first one coming from the Sky Warrior 2. $20 super chat from the Sky Warrior. How about that? I appreciate you, Sky Warrior 2. We love that. Might be our biggest super chat here on a live show. You actually may have thrown a 20 ball at us a couple weeks ago, but regardless, we appreciate you, Sky Warrior. Thank you so much. Here's what he had to say. Bengals need to go all in and pay their superstars and make this free agency and draft a home run to get that number 1 seed and go get that Super Bowl ring. Who day? Couldn't agree more with you, Sky Warrior. Absolutely something that Cincinnati needs to do. Man, if you could make the playoffs, run through the jungle. Whew. Obviously, you struggled at home, so you got to get that cleaned up. But not having to worry about going to Arrowhead Stadium or going to Buffalo or going to Baltimore, everybody coming here, got to be licking your chops if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. Hopefully, the front office can put this organization in a good spot this offseason, and then the players and coaches can go out and execute come the fall of next year. Rick Hunt, $10 super chat. Thanks so much for that, Rick. Appreciate you. $10 super chat. How about trade T for a second and third? This draft is loaded with great defense. Build the trenches and sign Darius Slayton at wide receiver and Adebo at cornerback. Slayton is a solid number 2 at third of the price. Interesting. Look, if you're not able to come to terms with Tee Higgins, I think a trade certainly is an option, right? Look, Cincinnati doesn't want to trade Tee Higgins, and it's my belief that they're going to be able to get things done with Tee Higgins. Didn't think that last year, but I think that changes now this year. And as far as the compensation, a second and a third, okay, but Tee Higgins, in my opinion, this guy is top 15 wide receiver in the league. Darius Slayton, he's not a wide receiver 2. You could bring him in as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. I like Darius Slayton. Played well for the Giants. Played well against the Bengals for the Giants. But that doesn't really fill the void of Tee Higgins. Tee Higgins completely changes this team, changes this offense. So I hope it doesn't come to that. But as far as compensation for T, second and a third, that could be accurate, but hopefully it does not come to that. Appreciate that super chat, though, Rick. $10, my guy. Take a sip of water here, and then we'll get going with our next segment. Keep the comments coming, and also we got a mailbag around the corner. So get those questions in, #Bengals, in the comment section of today's video. What's going on, Bengals fans? Stone Shields on hand for another edition of Bengals Breakdown. Cincinnati got great news from the NFL in regards to the salary cap, and that is what we are going to be breaking down here on today's show. Hopefully some promising information that the Bengals received today, and hopefully their front office can move forward with it and make some steps in the right direction to make this team more competitive in 2025. But before we get into that, make sure you guys hit that sub button if you haven't done so already. It's youtube.com/BengalsTV. Hopefully let's get to 17K subscribers here on this video alone. I think we can do it. Just need 194 to make that happen. Help me out. Hit that sub button right now for Cincinnati Bengals coverage all offseason long. All right, so the Bengals have roughly $46 million in salary cap space to work with, but that's going to go up, and it's going to go up a lot because there's a lot of people on this roster that are going to get caught. We've talked about several of them here on the show, certainly Sheldon Rankins, Alex Kappa, a couple of examples of guys that probably are getting cut. Really inevitable, only a matter of time before some of these guys go. But salary cap is only going to increase, creating more cap space each and every season, and we got some details from the NFL today at what exactly the cap number is going to look like going forward. Let's take a look here at what the cap has done on a per-year basis. Look at that. It just continues to go up each and every single season. You get there to 2020, and then for the first time, it goes down from 2020 to 2021. But hey, what happened there? That's right, a global pandemic. COVID happened there. So barring that, barring a pandemic, this thing is going to go up each and every year. And in fact, it's going to skyrocket because you're talking about, the TV contracts, new TV deals that the NFL has, all the, games, playoff games on streaming services. That costs money, right? And that causes the cap to go up as well. Also, just inflation in general, to be honest with you. When you're talking about the NFL, it is a very, very popular product. Look, I love Major League Baseball, but, the majority of the world doesn't view baseball the same way as they view the National Football League. This product is incredibly popular, and it's only going to continue to get more popular, and that's why the cap is only going to continue to go up. So more cap space now and in the future is obviously going to help the Cincinnati Bengals because it allows them to spend more now and ultimately spend more in the future as well. And really, with Cincinnati, the things we talk about with this organization, what's our biggest gripe? Oh, they don't spend enough money. They're going to really have an opportunity to do that here going forward as the cap continues to go up. Up next, we're going to talk about some massive details you need to hear on the salary cap. We're going to be breaking it down here on Bengals Breakdown. Some new information has come out from the league as far as the numbers go. And again, this really could impact Cincinnati not only in the short term, but the long term as well. Leads us, though, to the pinned comment of today's video. Will the Bengals actually spend more this offseason? Again, the cap's going up. But are they going to adapt? Are they going to spend more? Or they kind of just do what they always do and be a cheap organization? Let me know in the comments section. Type Y for yes or N for no. If that ad comes here on YouTube, that's totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down in the comments. Let us know what you think. All right, so Brett Coleman, I really thought explained this very well. And we're going to break down exactly what he said. Here's what Brett had to write. He said the salary cap is going to explode again, and it's all because of this change in how Nielsen measured ratings. Starting this year, they're leaning into some data directly from smart TV manufacturers to measure viewing habits in addition to the traditional at-home panel method. This means NFL ratings, in particular from Sunday Ticket on YouTube, are going to be more accurately measured. And that number is going to be way bigger than you think because of just how many Gen Z and millennials consume football on streaming services. More accurate ratings means the league's next broadcast rights negotiation in 28 and 29 is going to be way more expensive, which ultimately means massive jumps in the salary cap. If I'm a GM, that means next year or maybe even this year, I can sign some truly outrageously backloaded deals with a ton of funny money that all slams home in 2030 and not even care about the math. Well, the Bengals got a double dose of good news, as we will talk about here. Here's kind of the second part that came out a little bit later in the afternoon from Dan Graziano. Here's what he tweeted. The NFL Today informed teams that the 2025 per-team salary cap will fall in the range of $277.5 million to $281.5 million, way up from last year's $255.4. Cap will have increased by more than $53 million over the last 2 years. Really, that is just an astronomical jump. And that really is unbelievable that it's really going to continue to do this on a yearly basis, again, barring a global pandemic or anything like that. So this is the approach that Cincinnati needs to have, right? Similar to that of the Philadelphia Eagles if they want to contend. They're going to have to be really aggressive, spend that money, and push that money down the line, right? As, Coleman talked about there, should be worried about what happens in 2030, right? We should be focused on now. You have a franchise quarterback. You have the best quarterback in the National Football League. Your mindset should be going out there on a yearly basis trying to vie for a Lombardi trophy. As I mentioned, we've seen the Eagles do this, right? They're paying guys all over the place. They're paying the quarterback. They're paying 2 receivers. They're paying guys all over their defense. They're paying their offensive line. How do they do it? Well, they maneuver the cap, right? And they push money deeper down into the future, and that's something that Cincinnati should adopt. They have the space to make this happen regardless, but with the cap going up even more, that's just more reason that things should be able to get done with Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, and Tee Higgins. It's a competitive advantage not to do this, right? You don't want to be known as this cheap organization who just happens to have an all-world quarterback, and you don't go out there and you don't capitalize on the time that you have with Joe Burrow. Right? It's a competitive disadvantage not to go out there and try to do those things because there are teams around the league that are going to be doing those things. And if you don't keep up with them, you're going to be in trouble. Now, we will be here all offseason long talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. Don't miss out on any of our coverage. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/Bengals TV. Again, trying to get to 17K here on this video alone. Help us out. Hit that sub button right now. So Coleman continued to talk about the Eagles' strategy when it came to, how exactly they approach things in the offseason. Here is what Coleman had to say. He said, keep in mind the NFL agreed to this media rights deal back in 2021, and then Jeff Lurie, who has a background in film and TV production and knows that the league will be going back to the table in 2029, signed Jalen Hurts to an extension 2 years later. That looks like this. Chess, not checkers, folks. Now let's go back to some of the comments that Duke Tobin had to make at the Senior Bowl with Kelsey Conway, and we've heard Tobin kind of talk about this. Kind of all the talk of, well, he can't take too much of the pie, right? There's got to be enough to go around to everybody. Here's what he had to say in relation to Tee Higgins specifically. It's going to be hard in terms of trying to bring him back. We feel like we have the resources to do it, but it all depends on how the negotiation goes and whether they're willing to accept wanting to come back at a number that makes sense for everybody. And what we do with T going forward, I've always been very upfront in my desire to have Tee Higgins on our team. I've never not been upfront about that, and that desire continues. But we have to be able to come together with his representation on what that means and what the right number is for his experience, his play time, and his production. So Tobin has shown concerns like this in the past, saying that it might not be feasible to pay all of their stars. Really, my message here is don't fall for that. Just not true, especially with the cap continuing to go up. The Bengals have plenty of space in order to make this happen and bring these guys back. It's just kind of changing their ways, altering the way that they structure contracts, and making it happen. Again, it comes down to whether or not you want to be a team that is competing for championships on a year-in and year-out basis, a serious organization. And you just happen to have a gift that you have, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the National Football League to make that happen. And also of note, the structure of your organization probably needs some adjusting as well. There was a report that came out with the Bengals scouting department, right? And there was like 3 or 4 guys in there. Like, what are we doing? What is this? Is this amateur hour here? Cincinnati has to understand that this isn't the Bengals of, several years ago. It's not Ryan Finley out there playing quarterback. No disrespect to him, all right? This should be a team that is competitive every single year, and as an organization, you have to make sure you are altering so you are under that theory as well and are doing things in the most professional manner possible. That's something, of course, Cincinnati hasn't been known to do. What is your confidence level in the Bengals front office? Let me know in the comments section. Scale it for us 1 to 10 right now. Now, look. Obviously, there are some hoops that you got to jump through, right? You're paying Joe Burrow, and hopefully you're paying Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins and Trey Hendrickson as well. They're certainly going to garner sizable deals. So that does make it a little bit more complicated to manage the cap, but you certainly can get it done. Again, going to keep bringing up the Philadelphia Eagles, as is every other team, right? It's copycat league, all that nonsense, right? Well, it is, and they just won the Super Bowl. So, they're clearly doing something right. They've shown you how doable this is. And again, down the line, 2029, 2030, who cares? We're living now. This is 2025. We're trying to win now. We can't be worried about what things are going to look like at that point. You got to go out there. You got to pay your stars, and you got to take advantage of this cap going up. I want this team to be aggressive. Everybody in the fan base wants this team to be aggressive. It all goes back to the quarterback. You got Joe Burrow. There's no reason you should be missing the playoffs when he plays every single game. That should never happen. That's ridiculous, in fact, that it happened. You are capable of so much more than that. You don't want to be a team that's just a fringe playoff team. You can do that, by the way, with Joe Burrow. You could roll out there and say, nah, we're not changing our ways. We're not paying people. We're just going to go with Joe Burrow and roll with it. He'll make you a fringe playoff team each and every year. But that's not what you should be. You should be a team that goes on runs. You should be a team that dominates the AFC North, goes back and forth with Baltimore, and you're pretty much in the AFC Championship every year, every other year. That's where you should be right now. You have the best quarterback on the planet, in my opinion, and as each day goes on, I just get more confident with that statement, and I really believe that the Bengals have it there in Joe Burrow. It's time that they take advantage of it and start acting like a winning organization. Mailbag time here at Bengals Breakdown. Get those questions in, hashtag Bengals or Super Chat to skip the line altogether. We've got a couple. 2 Super Chats. The Sky Warrior 2, he sent another one in. Appreciate you. We will get to those. On our mailbag. So get those questions in. Hashtag Bengals right now, and we'll get to them. Super chat. Skip the line altogether. Colin has concerns with Tobin drafting well. It's kind of a mixed bag here at this point for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's got some really good ones. He's got some whiffs as well. So that's kind of really what I'm expecting here going into this draft, right? Hopefully you hit, though, in the front end, because that's something that a couple of years ago you whiffed with Myles Murphy. You hit a home run last year with Amarius Mims. So let's go back-to-back home runs. That obviously is the goal here. If you are the Bengals, get the questions in. Hashtag Bengals or Super Chat. Yeah, we will hit those Super Chats here on the mailbag. We got enough questions in, Chris? Not quite? Not quite. Keep the questions coming, folks. Got over 100 people in here getting ready to start our mailbag here. Make sure you use hashtag Bengals for your questions so producer Chris can find them. And as of right now, we don't have enough to go forward throughout the entirety of the mailbag, so make sure you get your questions in. Hashtag Bengals. Wait for a couple of more to come in before we kick off our mailbag here. Also have 2 Super Chats to get to, the Sky Warrior and Jeff as well. Colin, you got your question in, but you didn't use hashtag Bengals. Make sure you send that in with hashtag Bengals as well. Are we in a spot where we need to do that? Okay. Oh, we got another Super Chat. Yeah, you make the call. Doesn't matter to me. Okay. All right, so we're going to postpone this mailbag to our last segment. We got your Super Chat from a real one. Appreciate you. We will get to that on our mailbag, but we're going to do this mock draft segment here first, and then we are going to transition back to the mailbag. Keep the questions coming. We got several more that just slid in there. Good now? All right. Change of plan. Back to the original plan. Going with the mailbag here as our third segment. Keep the comments and the questions coming. Again, hashtag Bengals. Use that so my guy Chris can find them. And even after we start, you can keep the questions coming, and Chris will adjust to those in real time. So keep them coming in, and we will get started here with our live mailbag. Make sure you guys share today's video for me on social media if you have not done so already. Any platform in which you desire. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. It works for us. Just trying to get the word out there to some Bengals fans that aren't necessarily tapped into the things that we are doing here at Bengals Breakdown. We're, of course, trying to grow our channel. So help me out. Share today's video for me right now. First, a $5 Super Chat to start this afternoon's mailbag from the Sky Warrior 2. It's make or break year for Zach Taylor and the Cincinnati Bengals. Go get that ring. Totally agree with you, Sky Warrior. This feels like the biggest offseason in the history of the Cincinnati Bengals franchise, and I don't think that is that's hyperbole whatsoever. I think that is just the reality of the situation. I think things are in a good spot. You've heard some reports, some rumblings that Cincinnati is going to try to come to long-term agreements with not only Tee Higgins, but Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson as well. I think that certainly is a step in the right direction, and hopefully that can culminate with Cincinnati making a push in the playoffs. But as we've talked about here, you got Joe Burrow at that quarterback position. There is absolutely no reason you should miss the playoffs when he plays every single game. Can't happen. Needs to be fixed going forward. Appreciate your super chat, Sky Warrior 2. From Jeff, another $5 super chat. Jeff says you need to run a Bengals salary cap scenario on Over the Cap and follow it up with a mock draft. Okay, good idea, Jeff. Certainly something that we could do going forward. We have one mock draft that I created that is out. Certainly we'll look into doing that as well, Jeff. I appreciate the $5 super chat. Stacy Cook, is Jermaine Burton a lost cause? That is a good question, Stacy. Look, I'll be up front with you guys. I'm an Alabama fan. I was excited when the Bengals drafted Jermaine Burton in the 3rd round last year. And even when he was out there on the football field, thought you saw some good things. But unfortunately, you can't fix stupid. That seems to be the situation here with Jermaine Burton. So I'm worried it is a lost cause. We'll see if Cincinnati ultimately cuts him or lets him come back another year. I think you probably give him another opportunity here in training camp, see if he's got his head screwed on more properly this year, see what he can do in the preseason, and kind of go from there. I don't think you cut him necessarily at this point. He's had some crazy, accusations against him. No charges, though, were pressed. So I think Cincinnati will probably let him stick around for a little bit longer, but I am worried that it could potentially be a lost cause. Your turn. Let me know in the comments section, what would you do with Jermaine Burton? Sound off for us. Type K for keep or C for cut. This is the pinned comment of today's video, so if that ad comes here on YouTube, that's totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down in the comments. Let us know what you think. Another super chat here, $10 from a real one. As far as the draft picks, they should go get them a good first-round edge rusher. Then in the 2nd round, get Harold Fannin Jr., tight end, and then also get Azeez Ojulari in free agency. Certainly interested in some of what you had to say there, a real one. Look, for me, pick number 17 overall, my thought process is best defensive player available. If you can get an edge guy that you'd like, but you believe has the ability to make an immediate impact, you go get him. You don't want a repeat of Myles Murphy. You can't afford another project with your first-round pick. Can't happen. So if you believe that a guy like, Mykel Williams, if he's available, James Pierce Jr., if he's available, Shamar Stewart, if he's available, Nick Scordon, just throwing out some guys, the Green guy as well, perhaps could be available. If you think that those guys can come in and make an immediate impact, you take him at that edge rusher spot, because we all know that certainly that needs to improve. As far as Harold Fannin, I like him a lot out of Bowling Green, tight end. Hopefully you can bring back Gesicki like Burrow wants to, but with the Eric All Jr. injury, you certainly have concerns there from a pass blocking kind of tight end. So I think adding one in the tight end in the draft might not be a bad idea. That might be a little bit early for me to take a tight end personally. And then Azeez Ojulari, kind of to follow up the last part of your super chat there, a real one. Ojulari was a guy that I had interest in at the deadline. New York ultimately decided to hang on to him and did not deal him. So we'll see. He's a guy that really hasn't necessarily produced the way people expected, but he did come on strong at the end of last year. So we'll see if Cincinnati perhaps is interested in landing a guy like Azeez Ojulari. $2 super chat from the Sky Warrior 2. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack to Cincinnati, please. Certainly some big time names there from the Sky Warrior, no doubt about that. I know Khalil Mack kind of has a decision to make whether or not he will continue playing football. Certainly a guy that I would be interested in. Joey Bosa, we'll see. Obviously, I'm sure he would like to come back to the state of Ohio, played his college ball at Ohio State. I think Chase Young, speaking of Ohio State, could certainly be a guy, a free agent pass rusher that you could be looking to land. I think you need to bring in some veterans on the defensive side of the football. You can't just hope to get a lot better via the draft. Got to bring some names in, and those aren't two bad names by any stretch of the imagination. We'll continue with our mailbag here in a moment, but do want to give a shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. Bengals sideline hats are available now for purchase. That link will be in the comments section and the description of today's video, chatsports.com/Bengals sideline. Look, I've got a few of these myself. Love rocking them. Obviously, it is the Bengals offseason here at this point, but that does not mean you can't get some Cincinnati Bengals swag. Really encourage you guys to get over to Fanatics. Check out those Bengals sideline hats. And again, that link will be in the comments section and the description of today's video. My guy, CWT, do you want the Bengals to sign Jair Alexander and any other free agents of note? So, CWT, we did a video on Jair Alexander. I am high on Jair Alexander. Look, He only has played 7 games the past 2 years. That certainly is a red flag there with the injuries. But by the way, he is not a free agent. The Packers would just have to move off of Jair Alexander. There are a lot of people out there that cover the team think that he is going to be released. If that is the case, I certainly do have some interest in Jair Alexander. There's some diva accusations with him, right? Maybe does he care a little bit too much about himself and not as much about his teammates? Certainly fair concern, but at one point he was viewed as the best cornerback in the National Football League, and he was the highest paid cornerback in the National Football League as well. I do have some interest in Jair Alexander if he became available. You don't know the situation with Mike Hilton going into free agency. He really is your only veteran there on the back end, and I certainly think you need to bring in a defensive back that is a veteran to help out that young room. Fernando, any shot Joseph Ossai returns? Ossai, of course, is going to be a free agent for the Cincinnati Bengals, and there probably is a chance. He had an opportunity this year to really make a name for himself. Credit to him for beating out Myles Murphy, right, the former #1 pick for the Cincinnati Bengals in 2023, but he's been here for 4 years. I've always just found myself wanting more with Joseph Ossai. Your defense absolutely stunk last year. Let's not mince words here. Certainly was the case, and I'm looking to move off Joseph Ossai. So me personally, I don't have any interest in bringing him back. I think there's some people around the team that maybe have some interest there, but he's a young guy that has a couple of sacks to his name. I think he's probably going to be a little bit more expensive than he deserves to be, and I think that really is a red flag for me as well. I personally would move off Ossai. What would you do with Joseph Ossai? Let me know in the comments section. Type B for bring back or L for let leave. I want to know what you think. Get down in the comments and sound off for us. My guy, Tim Tyra, what do you think about trading T to Dallas for Micah Parsons? If we can't come to an agreement with T. It's interesting, Tim, but that's not going to happen. I think Micah Parsons technically is more valuable than Tee Higgins. Maybe not to the Bengals and maybe not to me personally, but I think from a football perspective he certainly is. So I don't think that's something that could work out. I hear you though on wanting to bring in a star pass rusher. Boy, if you could put another star opposite Trey Hendrickson if he's coming back, that certainly would go a long way for your defense. Unfortunately, this is pretty unrealistic, Tim, and that's probably not something that I would go through either. I really, really want to make sure that Tee Higgins is a Bengal next season. From Steven, do you think anyone will sign T and give up 2 number 1s? No, I don't. Good question, though. So, of course, if Tee Higgins is to essentially leave, right, the Cincinnati Bengals not in a tag and trade situation, the team would have to give up 2 first-round picks in order to make that happen. Look, you had to be a star quarterback in order to get 2 first-round picks, maybe a star pass rusher, but really to me just a star quarterback is the only position where you could think about giving up 2 number 1s. I like Tee Higgins a lot. Also, you got to keep in mind that you have to pay him as well, right? Because he's ready to be paid at this point. So it would be 2 number 1s, and you'd have to pay him. Team's not going to do that. I consider that, I'm going to say impossible, but certainly highly, highly unlikely. If you are enjoying this mailbag, we appreciate you hanging out with us here at Bengals Breakdown. We will be doing these every single week all throughout the offseason. Don't miss out. Hit that sub button right now, youtube.com/BengalsTV. Mr. Larry, would you pursue Justin Simmons if available? Simmons is a guy that, I had some interest in last year, certainly, and I still think he has some good football ahead of him. The Bengals, of course, need some help at that safety spot. You took a swing on a guy like Geno Stone. That didn't work out. Again, there's people around the team that think that he's probably going to be back. He's a guy that I would cut. I would move off from. You need veterans there on the back end. That is not a bad name whatsoever. It just comes down to whether or not you as an organization still think he has good football ahead of him. What would you do with Jermaine Burton? Let me know in the comments of today's video. Type K for keep. Or C for cut. Certainly a situation, a decision rather, that Cincinnati has to make here. Just disappointing when you're talking about Jermaine Burton. He was a guy that has a lot of upside. He really does. But unfortunately, doesn't seem to know how to act like a professional here at this point. Off the field issues, on the field issues as well. We'll see if he can get it cleaned up. I would imagine Cincinnati is going to give him an opportunity in camp this offseason, and then if things aren't in a good spot, move off him. But we will see. All right, one more segment to go here on our live show. Daniel Jeremiah released his second mock draft, and we are going to be breaking down who he has the Cincinnati Bengals taking. Who do you want to draft at that number 17 overall spot for the Cincinnati Bengals? Let me know. Give me a name in the comment section right now. By the way, trying to make this the most commented video in the month of February. So get those names down in the comment section. Let's get at least 200 comments on today's video here today. So we're going to be talking about Daniel Jeremiah's latest 2025 NFL mock draft. We broke down a couple of weeks ago who he had in his first kind of rendition of his mock draft. He is back with another one. Cincinnati, of course, picks at number 17. Let's find out who he has the Bengals taking. Let's kind of see what Jeremiah has done leading up to that number 17 overall selection. He's got Abdul Carter going first overall to the Tennessee Titans. Certainly an interesting pick, but certainly a can't-miss pick either. Abdul Carter certainly going to be a great edge rusher in this league. First quarterback goes number 2, Cleveland Browns, Cam Ward, perhaps a guy that Cincinnati would be facing 2 times a year. Travis Hunter, number 3, to the New York Football Giants. Will Campbell going off the board at number 4 to the New England Patriots. A little protection there for Drake May. Mason Graham going to Jacksonville at that number 5 overall selection. Cincinnati certainly could use a player of the caliber of Mason Graham. There goes Shedeur Sanders to the Las Vegas Raiders. Tom Brady gets his quarterback there with Prime's kid, Shedeur. Tyler Warren going to be an incredible tight end in this league. Number 7 overall to the Jets. Jalen Walker going number 8 overall. Another edge rusher out of Georgia. Mike Green, back-to-back edge rushers here for Daniel Jeremiah. Out of Marshall, going 9 to the Saints. Kelvin Banks Jr., tackle, going 10 to the Chicago Bears out of Texas. Corner, Will Johnson out of Michigan, 11 overall to the 49ers. Walter Nolan, and a bit of a surprise here, number 12 overall to the Dallas Cowboys. Nolan, of course, has been linked a lot to the Cincinnati Bengals, but Jeremiah has got him going early here in this mock. Tyler Booker, also kind of a bit of an early selection here. Interior offensive lineman from the Alabama Crimson Tide, going to the Dolphins. Hanging out with Tua Tagovailoa there. Armand Membu, another interior offensive lineman out of Mizzou, going to Indianapolis. Michael Williams, potential Bengals target, 15 overall to the Falcons. And then Kenneth Grant, 16 overall to the Arizona Cardinals. That leaves Jahdae Barron going 17 overall to the Cincinnati Bengals, cornerback out of Texas, the Texas Longhorns. Certainly an interesting selection here for Daniel Jeremiah when you're talking about taking a guy like Jahdae Barron at that 17 overall selection. I think when you break down kind of who went before him as far as the corners go, is he the best corner available? I like Jahdae Barron. I really do. But I don't know if you necessarily take him at that 17 overall spot. Obviously, Morrison out of Notre Dame battling some injuries, but I think some people view him to be the better corner. But Daniel Jeremiah's got Jahdae Barron going 17 overall to the Cincinnati Bengals. Leads us to the pinned comment of today's video. Would you draft Jahdae Barron at number 17 overall? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section of today's video. If that ad comes here on YouTube, that's totally fine. Take advantage of it. Get down in the comments. Let us know what you think. Let's take a look at some of the rationale here from Daniel Jeremiah in regards to Cincinnati drafting Jahdae Barron. I'm sure the Bengals would consider a defensive tackle here, but Barron is too good to pass up. Also, there will be talented DTs available when Cincinnati is on the clock in round 2. Okay, I don't mind taking a corner at that 17 overall selection, right? Your corner play the past couple of years has not been good enough. When you're talking about Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner, Dax Hill, of course, got hurt, appeared to be, on the way of having a phenomenal season, but you need help there at corner. Allocating another first-round pick to the cornerback position might be something you need to do. But my biggest gripe here is that Malachi Starks was on the board. If you watch the show, if you know me, I want Malachi Starks if he is available at that number 17 overall selection. Stick around for the end of today's show because we're going to break down several guys that were available at that spot for Cincinnati that Jeremiah had them passing up on. But Jahdae Barron's a really, really solid player. Again, out of Texas. He's played in some really big-time football games, obviously. Playing for the Texas Longhorns under Sark. This is a guy that is a ball hawk, which I love. Has a nose for the football, will go out there, and he will get some picks. He will get some PBUs. Really do a great job at creating some turnovers for your defense, which obviously is intriguing. You've got some speed concerns there with Jahdae Barron. There's some people that think actually he would be a better nickel, which is interesting because you definitely could use an upgrade at nickel, assuming you're not able to bring back Mike Hilton. Obviously, that situation is very much up in the air at this point. But he's also a high football IQ guy, which I really like. Again, what's my biggest thing? I want the first-round pick to come in and be able to produce immediately. And I think Jahdae Barron could be that guy, whether he is, inside there at that nickel spot or you bump him outside to be an outside corner. Again, speed is the biggest concern with him. But this is a football guy, and he's going to be good in this league. I'm just not quite sure you take him at number 17 overall. Another opportunity for you guys to get involved with our show here at Bengals Breakdown. Do the Bengals need to add another cornerback, either free agency or through the draft? Let me know what you guys think. Type A for yes or B for no. Let's break down some pros and cons of drafting Jahdae Barron in the 2025 NFL Draft. Pro, you need corner help. Corner play has not been good enough the past couple of years. We broke down the guys, CTB, DJ Turner, Dax Hill, Josh Newton, the youngster you took in the 5th round last year. The play needs to improve. Marco Wilson, you could throw him in the mix as well. Play needs to improve at that position as well. Might not be a bad idea allocating a top-end resource. Again, he can contribute now. That's a pro. That's what I'm looking for when you take somebody in the 1st round of the 2025 NFL Draft through the Cincinnati Bengals. You're a team that needs a little bit more improvement defensively, and you're in the playoffs, right? And you got Joe Burrow, you got Jamar Chase, hopefully you got Tee Higgins to help you as well. Need a contributor immediately. And again, he comes from Texas, right? It's a guy that, look, there's guys across the league that come from small schools. I get that. There's some of the best players that ever play the game are from small schools. But at this day and age, I always like when guys come in from big-time schools because they felt the pressure. They've been in those big-time environments with the big-time crowds, and they've been coached in a professional manner. I think that's how Sark operates at Texas, so that really is intriguing to me. You're getting a guy that is a true professional. He's not going to screw around. He's not going to cause issues for you off the field, and that should be very intriguing. Certainly something you want in your round 1 pick. What position do you want the Bengals to draft in round 1? Drop the position name in the comments of today's video. If you're like me and you want the best defensive player available, that works as well. But regardless, get down in the comments section and let me know what you think. Now for some cons in drafting Jahdae Barron in the 1st round. Con number 1, are you good at drafting corners? It's a serious conversation you got to ask yourself here at this point. DJ Turner, you took him early. Okay, he was starting to play well before he, broke the clavicle against Los Angeles. CTB, you were really excited about him, but last year he got benched twice, was borderline unplayable at times, right? Dax Hill, it's taken him a while to get going. He was playing well last year after he made the transition to corner from safety. Then he gets hurt. So you've kind of had some whiffs here in recent years at that cornerback spot. Maybe you sit there and say, you know what, we're not very good at this. We'll go draft a different position early on, maybe add a corner late, or just bring in guys in free agency. Could be a reason to not draft Jahdae Barron. Con number 2, he's not a defensive lineman. He's not an interior offensive lineman. Those are your other weak points on this football team. Look, if you take a corner, you're going to have people coming at you for not taking a guy on your defensive line or your offensive line. That's just the way it is. And, the reality of the situation is you need help at all 3 of those spots. You throw safety in there as well, perhaps even linebacker. So you've got several holes on this football team that you need to address. It's up to the front office, leadership there to determine what is the biggest hole and which hole you want to fill in the 1st round. And lastly, is there too much youth in that room? I've come on here a lot and said, hey, you need a veteran on the back end of your defense. Particularly that corner spot. You look all around that corner room, youth, everywhere you look. And your guy that's a veteran in there at that nickel spot is Mike Hilton, but he's going to be a free agent, so you don't know necessarily if he will be back for this football team going forward, and that certainly could be a concern if you are the Cincinnati Bengals. Josh Newton, who was starting at the end of the year after the injuries to Dax Hill and DJ Turner, a 5th-round guy. Cam Taylor-Britt, still very young as well on his rookie deal. Maybe you need to bring someone in that has been around the block, that has been there, done that, and can really do a good job of boosting that room and helping you play at a higher level. I told you guys we would come back to this. So here is the guys that Jeremiah still had on his board when Cincinnati made that selection of Jahdae Barron at number 17 overall. Gray Zabel, interior offensive lineman out of North Dakota State. That really is kind of the best guard that was on the board. Now, people have floated around the idea of taking a receiver. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, I don't like that at all. But Teteroa McMillan is the best receiver in this class. So that gets a little bit interesting there. My guy right there in the middle, Malachi Starks, if he's there, I take him. I have a problem taking Barron over Malachi Starks here. Darius Alexander, defensive tackle out of Toledo. He's a guy that certainly could come in and help fill a void right along your defensive line. And a lot of people want edge rushers as well. I think Shamar Stewart was probably the best one available. He's got some question marks. He might be a guy that's a project that you don't want to take in that situation, but threw him on there as well as probably the best edge rusher that was still available for you at number 17. Final synopsis here from me. Look, I wouldn't be mad, but I feel like better options will present themselves at that number 17 overall selection. The Bengals need corner help, but you haven't drafted corner very well. Do you really want to go back there, or do you want to try, a different position that maybe you've had some more success with when it comes to your scouting department and all the people that, make the decision in terms of who to ultimately draft? So again, I'm not mad, but I think Cincinnati probably would be better suited going a different direction at 17. If you made it to the end of our video here today, we appreciate you. Get those who days for us in the comments of today's video. Who do you want at 17 overall? Let me know in the comments section of today's show. BK says, what if we get Jair Alexander? I'm here for it, man. I'm here for it. Totally here for it. I love how Tim is eye to eye with me on this Malachi Stark stuff. Have been from the jump. There it is again from Tim. Dale says trade the pick. We'll explore some trade situations as well in future videos going forward. Certainly something to consider. $5 super chat here before we get out of here on our live show. Natty Native Noise says, do you think the Bengals could sign Josh Sweat in free agency? Certainly a guy that we've had our eye on, right? Played beautifully for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he balled out in the Super Bowl. And what happens when you ball out in the Super Bowl? You get really, really expensive. So, look, Philadelphia might be trying to bring him back, to be completely honest with you. He did some great things for them. So, my gut says too expensive for Cincinnati and probably going to get a big contract that Cincinnati's not going to want to pay, considering all the other stuff they have to do. But certainly a great football player, and would love to have him here in Cincinnati. We will be live again next Wednesday for another live show. It'll be around 4:30, 4:45, somewhere in that ballpark. Hope you can make it then. Don't miss out. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/BengalsTV.